possessed and homeless children, they all belong to you. They all belong to you. And I am just a jangling man in the cold.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. My name is Sam Seder. This is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Irma cleanup begins. Houston floodwaters are incredibly toxic. Trump's ACA destruction continues unabashed. But it's a big week for single payer. Sanders Medicare for all drops tomorrow, and will every 2020 Democratic presidential hopeful support single payer? Meanwhile, the Republicans' election integrity assault begins anew in New Hampshire today. And Trump seems to be building a moat. Jared may be on the outside. UN agrees to the toughest ever North Korean sanctions. And if you want to make a Trump supporter mad about housing assistance, studies show that you can show them a picture of a black guy. Another reason why elections matter: appellate court. Appellate court judges. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. We are slimmed down. We are lean and mean today. It's just Matt and I. Michael is, as you know, Kelly has, well, she's now remote. I mean, she hasn't totally left the show. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, because I think she's there's a little bit of moonlighting going on. She has another gig. She's left the show, except for occasionally for some stuff. And Michael's traveled to, where is he, in Chicago?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Chicago.
Oh, are we supposed to keep that under wraps?
No, I think if I was more sure about it, I would say.
I guess he really didn't listen when he must have told you where he was going.
It's Chicago.
Yes, Michael's speaking at. Well, he's gone to some type of trade show, right?
Yes, him and Phil. It's Two Dope Boys related.
Two Dope Boys. They've come up with a new product, like some type of tchotchkes that they're pushing, right? Like those squeezy dice.
Audio Trend Report, actually.
What?
It's on it's augmented reality, virtual reality, and another one. I can't remember the virtual reality.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's all right.
So there's a extensive cleanup going on now, obviously, down in Florida. 12 million, I've seen reports of up to 12 million people have lost power, maybe closer to 10. I don't know. That power hopefully is starting to come back a little bit. And Houston, in the wake of the flooding there, and of course, there are islands in the Caribbean completely destroyed. And I think, it's possible we are a day or two away from some really horrific there are disastrous situations there as people are lacking food and clean water. And, of course, depending on the countries there's the U.S. Virgin Islands. There's, I think, the British Virgin Islands. They have French. So there's just a tremendous amount of difficulty amongst, some of those Caribbean islands. Some parts of Florida, it appears that they dodged a bullet, or at the very least, maybe dodged the bullet, ended up getting hit with a baseball bat. Better than getting shot with a bullet, I guess. And we'll talk about what's going on in Houston, apparently. New York Times checked out 2 different Houston neighborhoods, and the bacteria and toxins that, as a function of sewer overflow, like in people's houses, is off the charts. So be very careful if you're heading back into those areas. I mean, I don't know how many people who have been driven out of, let's say, Houston have time to listen to podcasts at this point, but really devastating. And listen to, this is Donald Trump's, or I should say the Homeland Security Advisor, Tom Bossert, right? And he's responding to a question from CNN's Jim Acosta about climate change. Now, on one hand, I can understand the idea that, like, okay, we have a narrow portfolio. We're dealing with that right now. But the idea that seeing a window into our future, like we have seen over the past 2 or 3 weeks, with the flooding in Houston and the devastation in the state of Florida, we're basically getting a glimpse into our future. And frankly, I don't know if it's one that we can mitigate or not. But, I spoke to Michael Mann on Ring of Fire last week, and he said, look, this is going to be something where when we talk about these 1 in 500 year storms, 1 in 100 year storms, we could be talking a 1 in 2 year storm, where the frequency of these things start happening exponentially faster. And so the idea that we wouldn't contemplate what's causing it is sort of shocking. I get there's a portfolio, but here is Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert answering a question about climate change in the light of what we've experienced in this country for the past 3 or 4 weeks.
Sponsor, the previous administration saw a connection between climate change and Homeland Security, and that the frequency and intensity of powerful storms like Harvey and Irma could pose a problem for future administrations. You could have FEMA budgets that can't keep up with the demand when you have powerful storms hitting the country. Is that something that you think this administration should take a look at? We know the president pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. Are these storms giving this administration some pause when it comes to the issue of climate change and Homeland Security?
I was here in the 2004 cycle of hurricanes, 4 and 6 weeks that hit Florida. I think what's prudent for us right now is to make sure that those response capabilities are there. Causality is something outside of my ability to analyze right now. I will tell you that we continue to take seriously the climate change, not the cause of it, but the things that we observe. And so there's rising floodwaters, I think 1 inch every 10 years in Tampa, things that would require prudent mitigation measures. And what I said from the podium the other day and what President Trump remains committed to is making sure that federal dollars aren't used to rebuild things that will be in harm's way later or that won't be hardened against the future predictable floods that we see. And that has to do with engineering analysis and changing conditions along eroding shorelines, but also in inland water and flood control projects.
So what he's saying there is that, well, we're going to react to things that we observe. We see rising sea levels. We're going to not build that. We're not going to help rebuild in an area that may be in jeopardy. but we're going to pretend like it was the sun god that did this. Or we're just going to say this. We're not even going to go that far into label it like that it was God. It just happens. It's just happening. I mean, this is just absurd. This is absurd policy. We would never do this anywhere. We don't go around. We have agencies. I mean, the fire department sends out regulators and says, hey, there's an obvious fire problem here. Matt would say this is like the 1800s and
or like I think 1666 was a London fire, as if they're just like, let's just continue building roofs with straw and cooking with fat.
Hello, what's this now? I want to go and encourage people to have an open flame in their home. The thatch roofs. Who knows? We just respond to what happens. Don't think about what the connection is between the fire and the thatch roof. Just look at the embers and say, hey, maybe we should extend the ceilings a little bit higher.
It's an extension of Trump. That's how he responds to any real life situation. Just respond in the moment, and the larger context doesn't matter.
I don't understand how the guy can stand up there, right? And just with a straight face say, like, we're just going to just, things show up, we're going to react in that way. We're not going to even contemplate the cause of these things. Just is what it is. Department of Homeland, it is what it is. That's just crazy. Folks, so much news. It can be hard to keep up with all of the political stories and perspectives. I've talked about it before, but that's why I love Texture. I like to read a lot of different magazines. I like to read my long forms. But I am not going to pay, with all due respect, $8 per magazine subscription at this point. Texture lets me read trusted sources of news and also keeps me from getting too, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. So with Texture, I can read a story from The New Yorker. I can read then a story from Rolling Stone. And then I can read a story from Family Handyman. I mean, they're not really stories. There are some of them stories.
That would make you an extreme polymath in like 1875.
Really? Is that all I need?
Carpentry and publications? I think so.
Boom. Renaissance man. Sometimes I'll read Wired too. All this on my Texture. Right there. I mean, the savings is enormous and the convenience is amazing. Plus, I see a story like, make a backyard shed. I mean, I don't know if it's a story. It's like instructions. It's sort of a story. It's like, I wanted it always starts off with the same thing with that. It's always like, I was looking outside and I was thinking, God, I wish I had a shed. And then I thought, why don't I do it myself? But the beauty is, like, I don't necessarily have the time to read it at that moment. I can star it, basically create my own magazine. Plus, thanks to Texture's daily recommendations, exclusive interactive features, you can easily pinpoint articles that you want to read. Texture is searchable. You can, like I say, you can mark what you like and dig it up again. Everything from National Geographic, Fast Company, Rolling Stone, available for way less than the Texture app, which was selected as one of Apple's top 2016 iPad apps. It's normally $9.99 a month, but if you sign up right now at texture.com/majority, you get a 14-day trial for free. That's 14 days. Try Texture for free when you go to texture.com/majority, texture.com/majority. Also, when you're talking about making the most of your time, getting the most information, what do you do? What can you do in 15 minutes? I mean, Matt, I know you could do it in 15 minutes.
Listen to about 45 minutes of audiobook.
There you go. A lot of people, 15 minutes on Facebook, online shopping for something. Instead, why not get a summary of a book's main points that you've been meaning to read by listening to key insights in just 15 minutes? One of the things that they say, like, Ask people, have you ever read 4 books in one day? Nobody does that. Well, Matt does. But now you can get to know what you need from a nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. Introducing Blinkist. It's an app. It has over 2,000 of the best-selling nonfiction books transformed into powerful packs you can read or listen to in just 15 minutes. You're listening to this podcast, so you love the idea of learning on the go with your smartphone. Imagine if you could listen to the key insights of a nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. Their team of experts is constantly curating and adding new titles from best of lists. So you're always getting the most powerful ideas distilled so you can hear them in just 15 minutes or less or made for mobile format. Barbara Ardenwright's Nickel and Dimed is out on Blinkist. That's something that I'm going to, I read that years ago. And I'm just going to refresh myself with it. That, there's that Matthew Desmond Evicted. We've been trying to book him on the show. We can't get him on. So now maybe instead of buying the book I'm going to go and just get the 15 minutes from that. Boom. Plus, there's things like Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. I'm not going to read that whole book. I'm going to practice what he preaches. I'm going to read him in 15 minutes. I'll listen to it. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for Majority Report listeners. Go to Blinkist.com/majority right now. Start your free trial or get 3 months off your yearly plan when you join today. Wow. That's Blinkist. Spelled Blink, Blinkist, Blinkist.com/majority to start your free trial or get your 3 months off your yearly plan. Blinkist.com/majority. Do you realize, Matt, how many books you could read? Because you can speed them up.
Yeah, 15 minutes. You could technically do that in 5.
That 4-hour work week. I'm going to try and do that. That's what I want to do. I want to have a 4-hour work week. Seriously. I'll tell you something. If I had a 4-hour work week and you mix that with Stamps.com, I would never have to do anything. I feel like I would never have to leave.
It should be the fight for 4 hours.
Come into the office for 4 hours and then go home. I don't know how that 4-hour work week works, but with Stamps.com, you can avoid the hassle of going to the post office. You can avoid the hassle of actually just leaving your office. Mail everything from postcards to envelopes to packages, domestic or international, with Stamps.com. It lets you buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail using your own computer and printer. You click, print, mail, and you're done. Stamps.com never closes. So you want to get work done at 3 in the morning? You can print postage or for letters or packages 24/7. Plus, they send you a digital scale that automatically calculates the exact postage and help you decide the best class of mail for your needs. You can get discounts at the post office itself, too. Stamps.com brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service right to your fingertips. Right now, you too can enjoy Stamps.com with a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale without long-term commitments. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, type in the Majority Report. No, just Majority Report. You don't have to do the. We should have established that very early on. I never did.
That's a common problem with bands, too. Arcade Fire has that issue.
Really?
Is it the Arcade Fire or Arcade Fire?
Oh, man. I'm glad to know those guys going through the same thing I am. Stamps.com, enter code Majority Report. Stamps.com, never leave your home or office again. All right, I want to dig in. There's 2 things happening in terms of Medicare, or I should say medicine in this country. One is that the Trump administration continues its assault on the Affordable Care Act. Now, let me back up for a minute. Lindsey Graham seems convinced that his plan is going to pass. He's got 18 days to get this passed. I don't think it's going to happen. But I would have to wait and see. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but hopefully no. You know, Mitch McConnell today was out crowing in the New York Times that the debt ceiling deal is not as good as people make. And his big argument was, you know, with mechanisms that we have to extend the country's borrowing power, the debt ceiling may not come up in 3 months. It may not come up for 6 months, which means he's going to be able to decouple the debt ceiling from the budget votes. And it's going to lessen Democrats' leverage. And when that guy starts squawking about stuff, it always makes me nervous. Not necessarily about what he squawks about, but just like he can't help himself. He preens so much that the only thing he can do is like pretend that he's squawking about one thing when in fact he's squawking about something else. Nevertheless, I don't know what's going to happen with that Graham legislation. But in the meantime, Donald Trump, his administration, seems to be hell-bent on, and this is even as in the Senate, the HELP Committee, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, are holding hearings to find out what insurance companies are requesting to strengthen Obamacare exchanges. We are 2 weeks out at this moment from insurance companies finalizing their decisions about whether or not they're going to sell in any specific exchange. And then in November, open enrollment will begin. It lasts for only 6 weeks now. I believe it's been shortened by the Trump administration. Insurers basically just want, I guess, like 2 or 3 major things. One, stop threatening to cut off the subsidies because we can't plan. The only thing that insurance companies are is basically just a bunch of individuals sitting in a room trying to work out the statistical likelihood that they'll have to pay out on claims. And balancing that against how much money is going to be coming in. That's what insurance is. And if they don't know how much money will be coming in, because they don't know if the subsidies are going to be there, then they can't function. They want an extension of a reinsurance program that basically backs up the insurance companies. These are basically the risk corridors, because again, this is so new, they don't have the ability to calculate those actuarial tables in a way that they feel confident about. And they want the individual mandate to be continue to be enforced so that the whole system works. That's it. While they are about to testify in front of a Republican-chaired committee in the Senate, the Trump administration, which said that it was going to cut it by 41%, the Navigator program. The Navigator program is basically a way, basically the help desk of Obamacare exchanges. That's the best way to look at it. They were community groups that get funding, pre-existing community groups that got funding. They would hire people on, and they would do outreach to people living between 133% and 400% of poverty in states that had expanded Medicaid from 100%, and I guess maybe even the states that didn't have expanded Medicaid, to help them navigate the exchanges. Over time, they become less and less important because people get it, but you still need this type of assistance. Trump administration said it's going to cut that budget by 40%. But here's the thing. They haven't paid out any of it. Not only have they not cut the budget yet, the $63 million that are supposed to go out to the program has lapsed. They're just simply not sending the checks or responding to letters about grants. So all of these organizations are wondering if they have any type of funding flow, and they're starting to cut people, lay people off with the hopes that when we get the funding, because they all assume eventually they have to get the funding. I don't know why they even assume that. They're hoping they're going to be able to hire these people back, but they're not going to be able to. I mean, this is part of the wholesale destruction of our governmental apparatus. But you're 50 days out from the open enrollment period, and if you don't have people helping people enroll, you're going to shrink these roles in Obamacare, and you're going to exacerbate the problem that insurers have. They're going to leave, and thus you're going to try and push and promote this death cycle, basically, the death spiral, as they call it. So all of this is going on in the Trump administration, and on the flip side of this, tomorrow afternoon at about 2:30 p.m., is my understanding, Bernie Sanders is going to announce and introduce, I guess, his Medicare for All bill. I imagine it's going to be quite detailed at that time. There are now, by my count, I think there are 6 now confirmed co-sponsors of this bill. They include Senator Cory Booker.
Surprise, surprise.
Kristen Gillibrand, I believe, is going to announce her co-sponsorship. Senator Jeff Merkley, who's been there for a long time. Elizabeth Warren. Kamala Harris. I think that's 5. Oh, and Brian Schatz. And so that's 6. There may be more. But this is very significant, because if there's something that just strikes you about the names Cory Booker, Kristen Gillibrand, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, it's because they're just about everyone in the Senate, and almost all in the Senate, I think. I can think of one more off the top of my head. 1 or 2 more who may be running for president in 2020 as a Democrat. Don't know the details yet of this bill, but it's interesting what's going on here, because there are 2 other bills that do not make the mistake of believing that they are necessarily in competition with these other bills. It is the Sanders is going to release the Medicare for All Act of 2017. In the meantime, you've got 2 other bills. One is, like I say, Brian Schatz from Hawaii. He has another bill. Now, he is signed on to co-sponsor Sanders' bill, and I think Sanders is actually going to co-sponsor his bill as well. So the idea is they're going to what they're doing, it seems to me, is they're defining the parameters of the debate, and they're not just defining the outside parameters, right? The reach. They're going to define the sort of like the slam dunk parameters, so that it can't be, there's going to be no room for a, hey, let's just, I don't know, hyper enhance the Affordable Care Act. There's both, I don't even want to say idealism. There's both aspiration here and pragmatism across the board. So Schatz's bill would open up, or would basically give states, I guess, the option of opening up their Medicaid programs to anyone who wants to buy into Medicaid. That's, I guess, the people who are uninsured. It would maintain Medicaid for low-income Americans. But if you are too high income to qualify to pay a premium to pay a premium in the exchanges, right, where you don't get a subsidy, you can join the program. You could use the subsidies if you are qualified under an Obamacare exchange. You could use those subsidies to buy into the Medicaid program. So it's you think of it as a public option on the exchanges, but expanded. And here's the thing. It would also raise reimbursement rates from Medicaid reimbursement rates to Medicare reimbursement rates. And it does all this without massive tax increases or even substantial tax increases. It doesn't, you keep your insurance, that type of stuff. And he's basically put it out there. He says, I don't see it as in competition to Bernie Sanders' plan. It is an interim step on the way to Bernie Sanders' plan. He's signed on to it. It's an interesting dynamic we're starting to see develop there. And now Chris Murphy is also going to be putting out a plan. He is one of those names that stuck out in my head who's also going to be running, I think, in 2020. Maybe not, but I have a feeling it will be. And that is to let any individual and business buy into Medicare as part of the exchange. And I think there's some crossover in terms of the Schatz plan, but it allows basically businesses to go buy into Medicare and offer that to their employees. I haven't seen it really drawn out, but that's the broad strokes of it. He claims that he may ultimately sign on to Sanders' single-payer bill. And I would imagine by then he will. But what they're doing is they're basically just saying, like, we're shutting the barn door. And this is the lowest bar we're going to allow if you're going to be in this conversation. So basically, it's a Medicare for all buy-in. Now, it's not, is it Medicare? I mean, no, because you got to purchase it. But it is putting everybody in the same bucket. It's basically introducing the plan to people. Obviously, it would be much cheaper. 8 other Democrats, led by Debbie Stabenow of Michigan last month, proposed to let individuals 55 and older opt for Medicare buy-in. So, I mean, the bottom line is all of these folks, and I should say Sherrod Brown has declined to co-sponsor Bernie Sanders' bill and instead has opted to support Schatz's bill. What you're looking at is somebody who is running in a tight race in 2018, and it's a fascinating dynamic. I mean, I think to a certain extent, what's happening is, and I think this is the way that it works with big funders, because I don't know that there would be a problem with people in Ohio if he signed on to Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. I mean, I think to a certain extent, it is a way of trying to avoid big funders running against him in Ohio, putting money against him in Ohio, where he basically is just saying, I'm going to sign on to the minimum allowable within the Democratic Party. Now, this is a guy in the past who has supported single payer, but the thing to keep in mind here is that Cory Booker can sign on to this, co-sponsor, and it doesn't mean anything. But it does raise the stakes for him not to run on it. Look at the value of Bernie Sanders running on single payer. Regardless of who won the election, by June of last year, it became a much more possible and popular policy than it was, well, significantly more so than it was 2 years earlier. Max Baucus, the guy who was the biggest roadblock, probably, to things like the public option, to things like a Medicare, a buy-in. I mean, certainly there were others. But Max Baucus chaired the Senate Finance Committee that drew up a lot of the provisions of the Affordable Care Act. And he has now come out. According to the Bozeman Daily Chronicle, which I read on a regular basis, former Montana Senator Max Baucus, my personal view is we've got to start looking at single payer. I think we should have hearings. We're getting there. It's going to happen. Obviously, Baucus can't do anything anymore, but he refused to hold a single hearing on single payer back when he was the guy who could hold those hearings. It's pretty crazy how far we have moved. And I don't think that's just a function. I think that's a function of what was happening during the Obama years. I think it's a function of what Bernie Sanders meant. Do I think Trump has contributed to it? Perhaps. But the idea that this many Democratic senators perceive this as a winning position to take, even if it's just preening, even if it's just lip service, the idea that they can't afford not to pay lip service to it is a positive. Because look, nothing's going to happen now anyways. Nothing's going to happen until the Democrats take control of the House and the Senate. And then nothing's going to happen anyways. But if they're going to run on this, if they're going to be, Schatz says he doesn't think single payer should be a litmus test because he doesn't think we can get there right away, and that's why he's offering this other bill. But, the proof is in not just the pudding, but also sort of like the smell of the pudding as it starts to cook pudding. Maybe not so much of pudding, but like a flan. It's in the flan. You cook a flan. My point is you smell it cooking. You get a good sense of whether or not it's what's cooking is good. So I don't know. This is very encouraging. We'll know more about this bill tomorrow. But the idea that you can't be taken seriously as a Democratic nominee in 2020 unless you are actively promoting single payer is a very encouraging idea. It's certainly not even remotely close to anything that I've experienced in my lifetime. Not even remotely close. So pretty exciting. I want to touch on this election integrity committee, too, in New Hampshire, because this is also really important. And we'll go into the fun half. What this committee is about, it's the Chris Kobach committee. He is the voter and disenfranchiser in chief from Kansas. And Trump set up the election integrity committee. Supposedly, it was about to address Trump's being convinced that there were 3 to 4 million undocumented immigrants who voted in the last election, 3 or 4 million fake votes. But this is an idea, and this has been a policy of the Republican Party for years, to disenfranchise people from voting, and this is what they're going to do, and this is why it's so important. This is, again, just an information war, basically. The committee is going to attempt to whitewash all of these fake theories and bunk numbers to promote some type of policy that's going to inhibit people's ability to vote. Here is Ann Coulter. You know, I imagine, well, maybe we haven't even talked about it on the show. There was a Pence aide, and there are people Chris Kobach, I think, wrote in Breitbart about this, that there was something like 5,000 people who voted in New Hampshire without a New Hampshire license. And it turns out that that's probably true because it's not illegal to vote in New Hampshire with an out-of-state license. I'd be surprised if it was only 5,000 people, because you can do that as a college student. You can do it if you've recently moved to New Hampshire from another state. It's perfectly legal. Many of those people, Washington Post, Dave Weigel, went up there on behest of the CIA to interview students there. And he said it took him about literally 15 minutes on Twitter to find and confirm 4 or 5 students, I think it was. But here's Ann Coulter coming in with the next round of it, right? Okay, well, it may be the case that it's okay for people to vote without a license there. And so that's what explains that. But we should really address that problem in and of itself.
The, I think, cleverer response, though doesn't persuade me. In fact, it makes me enraged for a completely separate reason, was in the Washington Post claiming, no, this is all college students. Well, okay.
Yeah, what does
College
it mean? Yeah.
students shouldn't be voting in states where they don't live. They're not going to change their driver's license. They're not going to change their car registration. I mean, these are the sorts of things that can be overlooked. And by the way, you have 6 months to do it. The commission looked back to see, have they done it, nearly a year later, and they still hadn't changed vehicle registrations or driver's licenses. And it was more than 5,000 of them, and she won by only 1,000 votes. So even if half of them were legitimate. But no, let's get back to college students being able to vote in states where they don't live. No, that's outrageous. You're there for a few years. Did you go to school in state?
Well, I claimed I was an in-state resident in North Carolina, but I
okay,
really,
we won't get into that.
Yeah.
But I never changed my registration.
Pause it for 1 second. So Howie Carr just announced that he had basically defrauded, what state was it? North Carolina? He just defrauded North Carolina. Well, let's not worry about that. Let's just worry about the idea that you go for somewhere for 4 years. You've left home, and you shouldn't be able to vote in that location. Continue on.
Resident of New York or a resident of Michigan. It's outrageous. These college kids, plus which, third outrage here, college kids shouldn't be voting. Just to get, the result of 13 years of Chinese-style brainwashing, bust them to the polls. I don't think that people should be able to vote until they're 30.
Now, look, I know Ann Coulter is just, and she's been trying to make herself more prominent again. I don't know. The other day she was tweeting stuff about Irma not being real as a way of putting yourself back in the limelight. But this is how desperate they are. And we're going to hear that. We're going to hear that about college students. In fact, we see it multiple places around the country. LaPage tried to do that. We see this where college students are disenfranchised. Now, of course, we don't even have voting on a weekend in this country. So the idea that you can get back to your state, or that you can get back to your state to get an absentee ballot, They just want to make it as hard as possible to vote.
I voted in both Minnesota and New York with a North Dakota license.
Did you really?
Yep.
You voted twice.
Well, not in the same election.
Oh. I asked that because Ann Coulter, coincidentally, had multiple registrations and was investigated, I believe, on multiple occasions for voter fraud.
Yeah, it looks like a Huffington Post article from 2010. Ann Coulter to face a vote on voter fraud charges in Connecticut.
Yeah, I think they looked into that. And then I think she had some problems maybe back in 2014. I'm not even sure. But so she's just grandstanding here. But that is one of the things that you're going to hear out of New Hampshire this weekend. I mean, I should say this week. There's going to be 4 other major fake presentations, as according to Think Progress. And they had a computer science professor at Gustavus Adolphus College, Max Halperin, who's advised lawmakers on election-related technology and legislation, look at some of these claims. One is the claim that 8,471 people cast more than one ballot in the 2016 election. So there were 120 plus, maybe 130 million people. And supposedly 8,500 cast more than one ballot in the 2016 election. However, this is Ken Block, the president of Simpatico Software Systems, is going to present to this panel a report by a conservative think tank that says that it's highly likely that 8,400 duplicate votes were cast in the 2016 election across 21 states. They did not have access to all 50 states and relied on commercial data sources to draw their conclusion. Well, the states themselves, they run checks to look for potential double voting using private voter lists, which contain far more information than published ones. So it's just a weaker version of what the states already do. And it turns out after the states look at this stuff, the vast majority of the initial flag people turn out to have no problems after all. Because there's a lot of false matches. 2 people named Matt Leck. Whatever. So, I mean, it's possible out of 130 million votes cast that there's a couple of thousand duplicate ballots, I guess. Possible.
I feel like the Clintons should have been able to do better than that.
There is an unpublished study, this is my favorite, that finds that voter ID doesn't affect turnout. Now, this is done by a guy named Dr. John Lott. He also is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, which argues and is floating the idea like we should do background checks for everybody who votes, like we do with gun ownership. This is the best part about his study. This guy Halperin, this expert in statistical analysis, writes, the fact that this is something he wrote more than 10 years ago and has not been able to get any kind of peer-reviewed publication should be a red flag on that study. That's sort of like a good indication, right, that there might be a problem. You do a study about voter ID, and nobody will sign off it.
It's just a peer review establishment.
That's right. Classic peer review elites. There's going to be a claim that the number of registered voters in a jurisdiction can't exceed the voting age population. Now contemplate this for a moment. 5,000 people in a district over the age of 18, but there are 5,200 people registered. How could that possibly be? Well, A, the number of voting age residents in a jurisdiction at any time is an estimate because people move in and out all the time. Also, jurisdictions are going to have basically non-voters in their districts because people have moved out or died. It's unbelievable that we're having to push back against stuff like this. And then, of course, there's the, you'll hear the license thing, which is more of a joke. But it's important for you to have refutations of this stuff quickly, because this is why they're doing it. I can tell you that. The reason why they're doing this tour is to create a notion, a predicate for them to do something to disenfranchise voters. What they'll do, we don't know yet. But that's why it's important for you to know about it. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to head into the fun half of the program. Folks, a reminder, this program relies on your support to exist. You can become a member today by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. And, we're looking to make a new hire. We're looking to upgrade the website, which I think is going to happen soon. We're going to redo the app. We're contemplating, another expansion. Over the years, it's, we've gone from sitting in a, really, I think a place where we should have had some type of like those masks you use when you're cutting wood, like the filter ones, the white ones. I wouldn't use a full gas mask, but into an office where we're doing a lot more. We got a couple of shows now emanating out of here. Doing more content, better video. Your support makes it all possible. You can become a member today at jointhemajorityreport.com. And what we do is we make it commercial free for you. So today we had 3 commercials. When we started this, we didn't have many ads, but now it's like becoming a benefit to become a member. You don't have to listen to ads. Plus, we give you bonus content. So if you want that bonus content and you can't afford to become a member, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Have some patience with us. We're well behind right now, but we will hook you up. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. Folks, give us a review at iTunes. All right, we'll be back in a minute. 646-257-3920. We are back. A verbal cue had caused me to take my headphones off. We haven't quite gotten it down yet, folks. We're going to get it down. We got a new board up. I voted in 4 states last November, but I never got reimbursed for gas. Do I contact Hillary or George Soros? What do we got here? Where did this go? We gotta have a tech day because we got a new board. I think that we're gonna drop into it. Let's see. Oh, this was pretty funny. You know, I've had some. You hear a lot of people say like, "What's wrong with Donald Trump? Is he crazy? Is he on Adderall? Is he doing blood? Why does he always want to? Why is he doing that all the time when he's really hyped up for a speech? He's like wants air to thrust through his teeth in some fashion. So you know, all this stuff about him being taking drugs or this and that. I don't know. It all sounds pretty suspicious to me. However, I may have to reconsider because America's greatest newsman has some inside information.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was told this by high-level sources, and it was evident, and especially after Reagan was shot in his first year in office, when he was acting like Trump and doing the right things, that he never really recovered. They gave him cold blood and his transfusion that causes brain damage. They slowly gave him small amounts of sedatives. It's known that most presidents end up getting drugged. Small dosages of sedatives until they build it up.
Is this? I mean, Matt, you like history, don't you?
Right.
Is it well known that most presidents are drugged? Are given drugs? Is that what it was?
Well, Kennedy had a history with drugs, different medications. Also, Nixon took...
well, they took drugs.
But yeah, not surreptitiously drugged. I haven't heard that.
I mean, I didn't know that was well known.
I mean, they tried to dose Castro with LSD.
Right. And GWHB, right? Or George Herbert Walker. I heard like there was a Halcyon story about him taking Halcyon. But I don't think that. But all right, go ahead. I just wanted to know. Maybe I'm out of it.
Trump's such a bull, he hasn't fully understood it yet. But I've talked to people, multiple ones, and they believe that they are putting a slow sedative that they're building up that's also addictive in his Diet Cokes and in his iced tea, and that the president by 6 or 7 at night is basically slurring his words and is drugged. Now, first they had to isolate him to do that. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, I've talked to people that talk to the president now at 9 at night. He is slurring his words. And I'm going to leave it at that. I've talked to folks that have talked to him directly. So notice, he's mentally ill. He's got Alzheimer's. They isolate him. Then you start slowly building up the dose. But instead of titrating it like poison, like venom of a cobra or a rattlesnake or a water moccasin, where you build it up slowly so that you get a immunity to it, you're building it slowly so the person doesn't notice it. First, it's almost zero, just a tiny bit, and then a little more. And then your brain subconsciously becomes addicted to it and wants it. And so as the dose gets bigger and bigger, you get more comfortable in it. The president's about 2 months into being
Wait. How does that? Is that how addiction works? You subconsciously want more and more, and so if you're surreptitiously given, you get more and more comfortable with it? So what's he saying? That you... Wouldn't you crave it? And you'd be like, why am I getting this? Like I'm getting... But don't you build the tolerance to it, too? I don't know. It's not like titrating.
So as the dose gets bigger and bigger, you get more comfortable in it. The president's about 2 months into being covertly drugged. Now, I'm risking my life, by the way, telling you all this. I was physically sick before I went on air because I'm smart. I don't mean that in a braggadocious way. I mean, I'm not dumb.
Let me also just add that I am also I'm putting my life under because where I'm talking about this, I'm showing it here too, right? And frankly, Matt, sorry, but your life is being threatened as well. We're all, anybody who heard the voice, we're all gonna have to be taken out.
I mean, not that I think that.
Shh.
Oh, sorry, should I run?
Just be careful with what you say. That's all I'm saying. What you want to say, but just be careful. No, there's probably people listening.
Well, I just think I didn't listen to the later Roger Stone appearance on this, but I'm glad that at least somebody can get some information out of that White House.
I mean, I wonder, like,
what other sources could he possibly be referencing?
No, of course he's talking about Roger Stone, and I don't know how Roger Stone would know that there's. I mean, that would mean that somebody is doing a very bad job of surreptitiously drugging the president, where other people around him know, right?
I think it's preemptive excuse making for Trump's increasing mental decline.
Well, that's what I'm starting to. I mean, that's what this is about, right? It's expectation setting. So Stone's going, ooh, Donald's really about as bad as I've ever seen him. Well, we better start making a narrative around this. First off, folks, if there's one thing I want you to learn from that video, it's never, ever, ever drink your Diet Coke from a glass. Make sure you get the bottle. Make sure that not a bottle even, because they can twist it back on. It's got to be a can. And that's not just about Diet Coke. That's with regular Coke. It's with any type of soda. Ain't really any type of drink, any type of soft drink.
And if he has someone mixing tea for him, I mean, that's a huge security.
That's a huge
loophole.
Security risk. They would never do that. I think, I mean, when you start to hear that, honestly, what I hear from that is Roger Stone's worried about him. Well, do you think, Roger, I should probably just go on and say, like, he's being drugged, or is that going to be enough?
I mean, he did say he's like a bull, so it's taken him 2 months of being poisoned to be brought down, but finally he's slurring at about 7
They don't
o'clock
realize
at
it. Yeah, I mean, they bring it with it's very small doses, and then by 9 p.m., the guy sounds almost incoherent.
As opposed to like at 5 in the afternoon when he's delivering a major speech, or 4 in the afternoon, or like first thing in the morning. I really think just the tone of all this stuff, the level of paranoia surrounding him suggests to me that, like, just people. I mean, you start to hear about all these the people lawyering up. There's all these people who are going to be witnesses. There's people, I think, who are getting contacted for investigation who are not necessarily subjects to the investigation. I mean, it just sort of feels like there's a list of potential witnesses being brought up at trial.
We played it yesterday on the show, but Bannon talking about the Comey investigation, saying it was in modern history biggest mistake, and he's talking about how he doesn't think that it's obvious, but if Comey wasn't fired, the Mueller investigation wouldn't be looking as broadly as it is.
Yeah, I think that's wishful thinking, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that my sense at the time and continues to be that Comey was headed in the exact same directions that Mueller was. Mueller may be able to bring in a broader array of resources in some ways. He doesn't have necessarily the bureaucratic problems. He can assemble a team of people who have retired in a way that maybe Comey couldn't. But and maybe Mueller in some ways has less bureaucratic problems, at least in investigating these things. Doesn't necessarily have the internal dissent that might have been at the FBI. But this is where it was headed. This is where it was headed from day one, I think, because this is where it was headed in June of last year. I mean, it's not like this investigation just started after Trump became president. This was an ongoing investigation, and it was going to lead somewhere because there's some place. And I think they're going to find it. I don't know if it has to do with Trump or the people around him, or if it's just, I don't know that it has anything to do with collusion per se, as much as it does about financial shenanigans. But something's rotten in Trump Tower, as they say. This is now my favorite. Well, let's go to the phones for a second. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. It's John from San Antonio. How you doing?
I'm doing well, John. How are you doing?
Yeah, it was an excellent opening. Good to get that information on single payer. Yeah, it was also an excellent call from Mike from PA last Wednesday. He talked about how unions are the great equalizer concerning race and gender, and I wholeheartedly agree. Fortunately, my father was a union politician, so I was taught at a very early age that it's essential to stand up to concentrated power. Also, when Rick Scott said during the preparation for Hurricane Irma, remember, you can rebuild your home. We can't rebuild your life. I'm not sparing any, and he also said, I'm not sparing any resources during Hurricane Irma. I agree with his logic, but shouldn't that apply also to single payer health care? I mean, more people will die because of a lack of insurance in Florida than will be killed by Hurricane Irma. Okay.
Yeah, of course. It's just that I think that there's the concentration of where the damage is happening is just more dramatic. I mean, you know, to a certain extent, like, you know, I think if you were an honest person, yes, you would make that argument. But Rick Scott's not an honest person, and he's just going to go where the cameras are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I talked to you last Tuesday about and since then 3 Republican congressmen have said they're going to retire. Do you see this as momentum for my argument concerning my debate with Mike from PA?
Well, all right. So Dave Trott is the latest, right? Who else is
right.
Who else retired? Was it did Dent and Reichardt announce their retirement since then as well?
Right, that's right.
Okay, so I think you probably I would actually be surprised if you didn't know this, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but my understanding is that we still haven't even hit the average amount of retirements yet for what we see during periods like this. Now, it could be we're looking at different, you know, sort of qualitative retirements. Charlie Dent was a pretty well established congressman. I mean, he was chair of what is it, the of one of the moderate caucuses. Now, you know, that may not be so much fun anymore if you're a Republican. But I think we need to see a half dozen other prominent Republican House members, and you know the bar for prominent as a House member is not that high before we start talking about that. But yes, but not quite, I would say.
Okay, well, here's the response from one senior GOP strategist. He's saying Trump is fracturing the party to the point where the risk of wholesale retirements and resignations will be high from mainstream lawmakers who come to Washington to do business. Here's a quote from Howie Klein. It says, meanwhile, the next generations of Republican candidates are more likely to be running in the image of Trump, substance-free, needlessly confrontational, and playing to the hardcore base. So here's my comment. I said, so if Steve Bannon and the Mercers are going to spend millions dividing the Republican Party, go ahead, form the Trump de-evolutionary crew and run in the midterms.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, but everything you're saying is not necessarily, if it works out that way, yes. If Steve Bannon is legit and the Mercers are legit going to do that, I love the idea of of a Mercer dollar going maybe and negating a Koch brother dollar, although there probably could be times where they don't necessarily conflict. That's all well and good, but I mean, we could have had this phone call 15 years ago when we were talking about this is fantastic. Grover Norquist running this guy Toomey against Specter. Man, this is going to end up as a disaster for them. And now we have Senator Toomey.
Yeah, okay. I agree with what Mike was saying about the individual races are more important than the generic ballot. But, starting in July, I've started putting together the most flippable Republican districts. Right now, I have 39 races listed. He wanted me to make a prediction, so I'll just go ahead and do it. Right now, I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to say Democrats 220, Republicans 215. He mentioned 3 states, Virginia,
Hold on
Pennsylvania,
one second. 220, 215. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. He mentioned 3 states, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. I have Virginia as a 10th district as the 6th most flippable district. Hillary Clinton won this district by 9.9%, which is the 4th largest victory by a Clinton in a district that a Republican won. Barbara Comstock won the district by 5.8, which is the 7th smallest amount by a Republican. 3 of the 4 special elections have now dropped that to the 11th closest. Also, when Dave Trott retired from Michigan in the 11th district, I rate that as the 6th most flippable district. Before, that was the 24th closest race, or that was the tipping point race just on the initial closest races that I put out.
Wait a second. So that was the 6th most flippable before the retirement?
Yeah,
Trot.
After the retirement.
Okay.
After the retirement.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this he's well established.
Okay.
Okay, so it was the 24th closest district, or it was at the tipping point district. Obviously, the 4 special elections, dropped that to 28th. So, also in Pennsylvania, I have the 8th district at number 21, the 6th district at number 22, Charlie Dent's district, the 15th district at number 23, and so I mean, all of these races basically right now on Charlie Cook and Larry Sabato and Nathan Gonzalez and Stu Rothenberg. They all rate them as all 3 of them have them as a lean Republican, which is basically gives Republican a 3 to 6 point lead approximately. So I think all of those districts are winnable districts, and I can go into a little bit more detail if you want me to.
No, I don't want you to go into more detail at this moment because we're still about a year and change out. But
okay.
Your point has been established. But let me just say this, okay? Anecdotally, like I don't know too much about Charlie Dent's district, but this is what I've heard. Okay, that it looks like the guy could be running from a Republican as a sort of a Trumpy loon of a bit. But that I've heard 2 things. I've heard, one, that the Democratic Party apparatus, and where is that district? It's not Allentown, is it? Where is it? It's Allentown.
It actually is Allentown. Okay. That's actually, I believe that's Mike from PA's district. I mean, I'm about 99% sure.
All right. Well, Mike will call in, but I haven't heard that there's that the strength in the Democratic Party, like the apparatus, is very high there. I have heard that there's been a lot of indivisible action and stuff like that there, and it's just a question of whether or not that's enough to go against a party apparatus. I mean, that's also, a seat like that is going to attract a lot of Coke money. Right? I mean, and it's going to, that it wouldn't surprise me if they parachute a lot of resources into a district like that, because that's not just a pickup. That's not just fighting off a Democratic, pickup opportunity. It is a pickup opportunity for, people who thought that Dent was too moderate. So but I know that's why you got it number 23. But nevertheless, I mean, it's just, on the ground, there's some like qualitative questions in these, but we'll see. But this is I don't want to step on Mike from PA's debate prep with this.
Okay. Well, I mean, the guy who actually is running, who said he was going to run against Charlie Dent, the Trump acolyte, it was actually the guy that he ran against in 2014. His last name is Simmons. So, I mean, that's an interesting.
Yeah, and apparently that
fact.
guy also had Dent revealed like that this guy had actually texted him and said, "What can we do to keep Trump from winning?" So I don't know. We'll see, John. But I appreciate the call, buddy.
All right.
Bye.
Can I make one point here about last week you said you were gonna clip the little segment I had with you last week. I haven't seen that clipped yet. Just for FYI. I mean, it's up to you.
Oh, you got to put up my soundboard, Matt, so I can do my Jacques Hughes sound.
It might be in the buffer still, or it might not. I'll take a look to see if it is.
The buffer?
There's like a buffer of videos that haven't been published
okay.
yet.
I didn't realize. Yeah, we got. I think I was supposed to get the buffer repaired. So appreciate the call, John.
It's like a grain elevator of videos.
All right, thank you.
We got to work on that buffer. It was one of the most expensive buffers too. We paid. We went with the premium buffer, and that was, man.
Manufactured in Germany.
I love Sarah Palin. Ann is right, though. If you work, sleep, and have friends in a place for a few years, do you really live there? That 8,400 vote number is terrifying. We need to spend billions of more dollars on outliers, in my opinion. Last, we need to start giving Alex Jones more credit. He made his name off of 9/11, and after that fell through, he didn't pick up his ball and go home. Now he's probably bigger than he's ever been. JGM got copies of Randall Wray's book, Modern Monetary Theory, and Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century. I think they'll be good reads. To Michael, I sent you the ProPublica article you asked for yesterday. Today is the New York City Democratic primary in many fields. How do you guys feel about de Blasio's tenure? I mean, I would say on balance mixed, but I think that the implications of pre-K for all, of UPK, I mean, look, this is now, and I'm going to say my bias right up front. Saul is in UPK. And when he started preschool 2 or 3 years ago, whatever it was, he's had 2 years, so however you would do it, I don't know that UPK existed at that time. And it has made a material difference in my life and work. I mean, we're probably, the new hire is going to probably be an addition, an expansion of the show. We're not going to have 4 people in here, but we're going to have, we're separating out the sort of the YouTube responsibilities with, and, you know, I'm looking to have someone who's going to like sort of help me with show prep. And a big part of that is UPK, because there is literally a savings of like 15 grand. Because I'm not having to pay for this year of school for Saul. That's huge. And if it's huge for me in this regard, I mean, the impact it's got to have on people's lives, it's just got to be enormous across the city. And it does not get the attention that I think A, it deserves, and that B, it merits. And I mean, I can't recall a single story, maybe a single story, of any difficulty in the implementation of this. I mean, maybe you're not looking for it, but I'm looking for these stories, particularly because I'm sensitive to this when it went on. And as far, and I didn't hear anything anecdotally, and I hang out with people who this age, who have kids this age all the time. The implementation was great. And this is also, I mean, when we talk about free college, right? This is free college just on the other end. And it conceptually, it talks about expanding like what we contemplate free public education is. 3 years ago in New York City, it was K through 12. That's what you could expect. An education, a free education for your kids, K through 12. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of problems with New York City public schools. There's a lot of problem with all schools. Segregation is a huge issue in this city, but there's a lot of other factors that have to do beyond the schooling. But expanding that and going just 1 year and seamlessly all of a sudden, it's not just K through 12. It is pre-K through 12. It is, the implications of that, I think, are huge. And and like I say, take what I say with a grain of salt because it impacts me directly. And so I'm probably more apt to be aware of the implications of it. But that's a big deal. Big deal. And I think it's underappreciated. So that in and of itself is pretty impressive. He ran as an anti-establishment progressive, and he's delivered on some issues but caved on others. Right, exactly. He's still better in my mind than Andrew Cuomo. He is light years better than Andrew Cuomo. Ryan from Ohio. You guys should have Kelly Carey from TYT Politics to talk about sexism in the workplace and the dumb left. George Quash. The porno Ted Cruz watched on Twitter on 9/11 is still under his likes. Matt Salmon Platt, please rate your 9/11s. Allende, the Bush one, Benghazi, Hillary's Parkinson's, Ted Cruz pleasuring himself. This is Ted Cruz. He liked sexual posts. And there was a video. Oh, there's an actual video there.
Sexual with 2L, yeah, and there's a video. It looks like realitykings.com.
So wait a second. Is that actually porn? Is that video? Can you play that video?
I can
just a screenshot.
Yeah, it's just a screenshot, but I can go to his tweets here.
And they didn't say how that got liked, did it?
No, I think his staff said they reported the tweet that was liked as if like he has a hack or some sort of thing like that.
But they didn't say they think it was a hack. They just reported it. That is a pretty lame thing to do if you hack an account just to like a... but I guess maybe that's what, that's what you would do to make it seem suspicious. Or maybe you accidentally hit the like button. I mean, look, I'm pro-porn. I'm not going to judge Ted Cruz on that.
Even on 9/11.
Even on 9/11. I think people should be able to watch porn any day they want. Even on Easter. So I think there's actually a couple of Jewish holidays. I think if you do it on Simchas Torah, it's actually a mitzvah.
It appears like it's been unliked by Ted Cruz. So.
Okay, well. Cruz said it was a staffing issue.
Staff?
Yes. Oh, God. It's nice to act like a 14-year-old boy again. Lauren, hey, guys. You had an IM last week asking if there was a Democratic candidate in the Alabama special election. I just wanted to let you know that Doug Jones is the Democratic candidate. He's known for prosecuting a couple of KKK members. It'll be interesting to see how that flies. Michigan law student, you guys should hire Noah, the super intern, to replace Kelly. He would be a great addition to the team. I don't know where he is these days. Chris Lepaco. Muammar Gaddafi blamed a revolt against his rule on al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden on Thursday and said protesters were fueled by milk and Nescafe spiked with hallucinogenics in a rambling appeal for calm. Gaddafi, who just 2 days ago vowed in a televised address to crush the revolt and fight to the last, showed none of the fist-thumping rage of the speech. This time he spoke to state television by telephone without appearing in person, and his tone seemed more conciliatory. With much of his country out of government control. Their ages are 17. They give them pills at night. They put hallucinatory pills in their drinks, their milk, their coffee, their Nescafe. They are criminals. I don't know if this is reminiscent of Benghazi or of what's going on with Trump. Greg the Cuckster, 4-hour work week sounds like a Bernie pony. I love your show, but your pronunciation of Spanish words is like nails on a chalkboard. I hope your new hire will be able to assist you on this. Flan. Did I say flan? Yeah. I have that problem with my A's no matter what it is. It's not just Spanish words. Right? I mean, it's Massachusetts.
I didn't even know that was a Spanish word, actually.
Alex Jones is way off. Increasing the dosage doesn't increase the potency. Only diluting will increase the effect. Water. Hand clap has hand clap a hand clap memory. Hand clap. I don't get it. Left is
Water
best.
has a memory? Is that homeopathy? I can't tell.
I don't know. Left is best. So according to Alex Jones, Reagan was doing a good job until he was shot, and then he was a brain-damaged boob. While I disagree with Jones about the first couple of months of Reagan's administration, I wholeheartedly agree with the rest. Neff. Okay, so following Ann Coulter's logic, we changed the sign-up age for the draft as well as the volunteer from being 18. Both ages start at 30 because no one should be fighting in any war or government they have no vote in, and boom. End all our wars for resources around the globe. Thanks, Ann. Or do you want to walk that comment back on it? Attorney Andrew, reporting from the hellscape that is Pod Save America podcast. I listened to the HRC interview this morning and offered the following tidbits. Did they interview her? Oh. 1, Hillary mentions her primary voting margin more than 3 times in the first 30 minutes of the interview. 2, in the same 30 minutes, she mentions Sanders is not a Democrat at least 7 times. You know, I just want to remind people, well, I don't want to get sucked into this. 3, she continues to undermine Democratic arguments against Citizens United, now with a twist. Before it was just Hillary who was not affected by big money. Now our argument literally is Democratic donors are categorically better than Republican donors. If you donate to Democrats, you're selfless because you do so means you're donating to people who will likely raise your taxes. Finally, this book is likely not, as some are claiming, Hillary taking responsibility for her failures. Her taking responsibility is her saying that, as she does in this interview, that she should have spoken about Russia earlier. In reality, this book and many of her interviewers are like when someone apologizes for something and then immediately follows with, but we both made mistakes. I mean, look, I'm not going to address this for a couple of reasons. 1, I don't have the time to read her book. 2, I don't have the time to listen to Pod Save America. And 3, I don't think, most importantly, that with all due respect to Hillary Clinton, like a lot of candidates who lose the election, and particularly ones who don't end up going back to the Senate or whatnot, what they have to say is largely unimportant. Now, 2003, when Al Gore came out of, Beardsville and came out against the war, that was valuable because there were no voices who were coming out against the war at that time. And the Democratic Party was very weak on it. And it had, I would say, about 0 impact. I paid a lot of attention to it because I wanted it to have impact. I don't know what is even actionable about what Hillary Clinton is saying now. I don't know what leverage it provides to the Democratic Party. And I don't know that people are going to act on any of it. Look, if states want to determine, if state Democratic parties want to determine that Bernie Sanders, if he runs again, is not eligible to be on the ballot unless he becomes a Democrat, they are certainly more than capable of doing that. Will they pay a political price? Probably. I mean, I would imagine. Far more interesting to me than what Hillary Clinton is saying, one way or another. Because I think, frankly, there's the only thing that can happen at this point when it comes to these battles, which is why when Jimmy Dore does this dumb stuff, I think it's just as dumb, is that you can harden the supporters of, the dead enders on both sides who want to relitigate this instead of moving forward. I don't have the time to get into it today, but I got into something with Peter Dow on Twitter, just because and I've tried my best to stay out of it, but we'll talk more about it tomorrow. But I think that fundamentally, I think this stuff is destructive. If someone can call me and make the argument that what we're hearing from Clinton is not destructive, I'd like to hear that argument. Does she have the right to do it? Of course. Do I have the right not to read the book? Of course. But if someone wants to make the argument from the perspective of, well, a progressive, from the perspective of a liberal, you can define those terms in any way you want, from the perspective of a Democratic partisan, if someone wants to make the argument to me that what Clinton is doing is not destructive, or you can make the argument that it's constructive, I am more than willing to hear that argument. Because I've been racking my brain as to what the value of this is from anybody's perspective. I mean, I can see the value of people who don't want Bernie Sanders to have as much policy sway on the Democratic Party. But I don't consider those people to be liberal or progressive. I mean, right now you've got all of the major, not all, but a significant amount of the candidates that very well could be the top contenders for the 2020 presidential nomination in the Senate anyways, not just supportive of one of Bernie Sanders' key pieces of legislation, but co-sponsoring it. I understand that people might be concerned about his influence, but I don't think those people are liberal or progressive in any way. But I'm definitely open to it. 646-257-3920. I want to hear it. In the meantime, let's play this video. So this guy, Randall Minot, and look, I have no way of verifying this. I watched this, and the first thing I thought was is this got to be staged? Is this staged? Because this guy, and I think he must have been, I mean, maybe it's staged, but I don't know. The Daily News spoke to this guy. He's from New Jersey. He's got a Facebook page. He posted this on Facebook. According to the Daily News, this was a confrontation he had in Kansas. I don't know if he went out, and as soon as at one point in the exchange, he started live streaming it, maybe. And that's why the cops were acting this way. But I don't know the context, but it is, let me put it this way. Even if this turns out to not be real, which I got to say, if it's not, they've done an amazing job. The anger that this guy feels and the way that he expresses it, I think is very helpful. But let me just set the scene. Apparently, this guy, Randall Minot, pulled over by the police, supposedly the cops told him because he didn't take a turn signal. And then another cop said, well, it was because of the tint in your windows, even though apparently his window was down. But he'll explain why he's reacting the way he's reacting.
Nobody behind me. Big fucking crime, right? Big crime. A crime enough for you to come with your fucking gun pulled out, right? Right?
What's going on? We got a problem.
To feel like you need to take out your service pistol, right?
All right, rewind it
Right?
just a little bit. Rewind it just a little
Right?
bit here.
You
Hold
pulled
on.
out.
So here
Right?
it is. So here it is. He is he's talking. He's yelling at the cops who are standing by his window.
Right? Right? That's big enough of a turn signal not made is a big enough of a crime for you to feel like you need to take out your service pistol. Right? 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 That's what's up. Probably see yourself on the internet. Fucking prick shit. That's prick shit, bruh. That's prick shit. You see, if you just came to the car and did your regular routine, I wouldn't have had no issue. I turned around to a fucking gun pointed in my face. Do you feel empowered now that you pointed your gun at me? Do you feel empowered? You feel empowered, don't you? Right? What happened? They fucked you up in school. They used to beat you up. You didn't get pussy in school. What made you feel bold to do that? I don't. And I know it's an individual. Not every cop is fucked up. But when I hear something fucked up happen to a cop, I be like, he probably had it fucking coming. Because the motherfuckers like you. Good cops get fucked up raps because of people like you. You came to the car with your gun out. For what? Do you have no conscience? You don't see what the fuck going on TV? But you don't give a fuck, right? Because I just would have been another dead black motherfucker, right? And you just would have went about your business, right? 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 Let's keep it real. Let's keep it 100. I have no issue if you could just be honest, right? You just would have been like, oh, a mistake happened. Right? You'd have been able to just wake up the next day, not lose a drop of motherfucking sleep. But I'd have had 3 fucking kids. 3 kids with no dad. Dad a criminal? Nope. Dad a thug? Nope. Dad shot dead by a cop, made a mistake. Because you want to come with your gun drawn. You got kids and a wife? Don't you want to make it to your fucking kids and wife?
And the cop, for most of it, is just sitting there saying, okay. I mean, I wonder if it's just like he sees that all of a sudden he's on live video and realizes he made a mistake. But that's pretty, I mean, it takes a lot of balls from that guy. Middle of the night. Cop comes on him with a gun. As soon as that gun's away, and he's presumably, right, the gun's holstered, and maybe when the cop went back to check the car, he fired up, I don't know, streaming it live. But I don't know. There's going to be a day, obviously, where we have this, every car is going to have that front-facing camera and the back-facing camera simultaneously. It's going to make a big difference.
You just wonder if it's just, what that cop was feeling was rage, or was it, oh crap, I'm busted? Like, you have no idea, but it's the phone that's basically keeping him off at that point.
That's the sense I get. And he's just doing the, okay. It really is an amazing moment. And the guy, I have to say, he's expressing a certain amount of rage, but I also have to say that, he's being pretty clear to, be reasonable about the whole thing. I don't know. I find that really impressive.
You think after you turn around and see a barrel of a gun pointed at your face, the heart rate, I think, would maybe go up.
I would imagine. Let's go to the phones. You're calling from a 330 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Richard. How are you?
Hello, Richard. What's going on?
Well, it's a minor miracle, Sam. I found myself agreeing with you today.
Well,
kind of.
Kind of. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, two things. First of all, y'all were talking about Ted Cruz and porn earlier, and porn on 9/11. Have you thought about 9/11 porn? Maybe that's what's so shameful about it.
Well,
that's something I have to point out.
Yeah, I get it.
But okay, so more important though is this whole Hillary Clinton thing. Since I don't know if you listened to your show yesterday or not, but Michael and Matt spent a fair amount of time harassing Ms. Clinton about it. And honestly, I think you were 3/4 right there, but the last wrong, which is basically at this point, we got much bigger problems other than Hillary Clinton writing a book to make even more money for herself. I mean, that's painfully clear that that's the only reason she did this. There's no earthly reason for her to do this other than pulling in some more buckaroons.
Well,
So
I mean,
like
look, I think
Coulter.
people like that also want to, have their say. And that's, look, I don't know why she wrote the book. You don't know why she wrote the book. But here's the more important part. It doesn't matter. And frankly, who cares?
And that's exactly my point. Frankly, I would prefer it if we just left this whole thing behind and moved on to more important things, which is how can we fight Trump? How can we win the next couple of elections? How can we make this country better rather than, is it really Bernie's fault? Is it, it's all done and over with. Let's just fucking move on already.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with you totally. In fact, my, the argument that I was going to have with Peter Dow about this was basically like the one that you're just articulating. Like and again, I challenge anybody, and maybe challenge the wrong word. I beg anybody, call in, tell me what is constructive from this. What's the value of this? This is the thing, and I tried to say the other day, is that I hold the candidate to a higher standard. I can understand, look, I don't think it's helpful what some Bernie surrogates do these days. And certainly, obviously, I think people know my perspective on folks like Jimmy Dore. But I hold the candidate to a higher standard. I mean, they presumably they have an ability to perceive and to act upon what is good for more than themselves and even more from their agenda. And, look, I don't know. I don't think she's running for anything again. I can't understand what the value of this is. But I appreciate the call.
Aside from self-justification and dollars, none.
I don't know. I appreciate the call.
Okay.
Bye.
Ciao.
We did one video on it just to defend ourselves a little bit. We did much more on Bannon. But I think there's some political motivations for her releasing this book and not just money.
I mean, I haven't read the book, so I have no idea what's in it. All I've seen is a couple of those handful of pages, which I don't think are particularly helpful. The Verrett stuff, do I know how, deep the coordination was? There's obviously some. It's all done as a rollout. I mean, people who are involved in media and, publicity understand how this stuff works. The Verrett thing, I mean, I don't know how much funding they're willing to pump into it. I get the feeling that Peter Dow would bankrupt himself before he would let that thing go under. And he's got a lot of money, I mean, presumably from that the settlement with Arianna Huffington. But nevertheless, I would be really curious to see, like the Alexa ratings for this type of stuff. Calling from an 832 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Sam.
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Okay, good. You can hear me.
I can.
Yeah, this is Nate from Houston.
Hello, Nate.
I don't know if you're tracking. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you're tracking on, I don't know if you follow like Neera Tanden. She just had this big rally in Iowa where basically it was supposed to be this progressive Iowa, I don't know, a sort of a quasi grassroots thing, and she basically didn't have anyone to really talk to. A lot of people left for the rally when she came on stage, and with things like this, and now all these senators signing up for the Medicare for All bill, do you think there's any hope for like the Democratic National Committee to go like realize, hey, the politics are shifting left in their corporate stance, and that at the main body? Like, I get why Kamala Harris did it, and I can totally see it, and and I'm not willing to hold judgment against her, even though I was supporting Bernie in the primary, so I'm willing to keep an open mind. But do you believe can the DNC shift to the left, and realize that they're going to lose?
What's the DNC?
They're going to lose in 2018.
What do you mean by the DNC? You mean like the 5,200 people, whatever, that are hired by them? I mean, here's the thing: is that like the DNC? I mean,
like the people, the Tom Perez's, the people, when they realize they're not raising, they're getting lower and lower in fundraising.
Yeah.
They're still trying to drive this still pro-centrist triangulation message out of the Clintons in the 90s, and have to now realize and wake up, this isn't working. This isn't working for us no longer. Do you think that's possible?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, look, when Tom Perez chaired it, or became the chair, was elected the chair by the DNC, he had the opportunity, he had the resources, all the hires that were going to happened from a certain pool of people that were probably more like Obama people. Had Keith Ellison been the chair, then the hires would have come from like Bernie type people. That's just the reality. Okay? Those people are not going to change. They come from a certain political orientation. They're not going to change who they are. But is power flowing to the Sanders people because of what you've just talked about? Yes. Do I think the DNC is going to fundamentally change? No, not until there's a different chair. But I don't think the DNC has the power that you seem to be attributing to it. I mean, they are an administrative body largely. And now, can they administer things that will help a certain candidate over another? Yeah, like the debate schedule. And let's also be clear. It was Martin O'Malley who came up with the DNC is in the bag for Hillary thing. And that happened in June of 2015. And Bernie was pretty quiet during that. I mean, I specifically remember that because I went on and was, I remember doing a hit on TV about it. But there's not a lot that the national DNC can do. They can fundraise. They're not doing a very good job at that. They can build apparatus in 50 states. I don't know how good of a job they're doing in that sense. But this notion that they are, able to fundamentally alter the outcome of things, I think is just wrong. I think it's just a mistake. You're giving them. You're just. It's a myth. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. I mean, you have access to a pool of resources, which is very valuable. But at the end of the day, that pool of resources can be overcome. Barack Obama showed that. I don't think the DNC was the difference between Clinton and Sanders. I just don't. I mean, and if you have
when you put the dynamic of a two-party system, this is the thing. I everything you say, I'm 100% on board. It's salient. It's to the point. It's like, yeah, it's true. But it's in the constructs of the system that's been created. Because
but the DNC doesn't. I mean, yeah, I mean,
a third-party candidate in our political system is not realistic.
That's correct. That's correct. But what is it that you think about the DNC as an organization? You know, these, you know, I don't know, 50, 200 people or whatever it is. What is it that you think that they?
I think within the party system, I think more engage the grassroots activism instead of getting away from its terrible history of this. And I mean, I'm not just talking about the Clintons. I'm talking from Lyndon Johnson, that line all the way through. That this very centrist political, it just needs to it be reformed into a more of a grassroots organization. They're in there. It can be done. But until we change the two-party system, that's what I mean, work within that two-party system.
Right. No, I agree. But, like, you know, the DNC as an organization out of Washington does not have the ability to make, you know, I don't know what reforms you think that they can make. As a group, I mean, look, it's, you know, it's disaggregated. You know, you can become a member of the DNC by running locally and getting into a position where you will have a vote in their future elections. You can, you know, it's. I mean, like, what would you like to see differently? I mean, I would like to see, you know, a return to the you know the 50 state strategy, but you know that was enacted by a guy who was, you know, certainly to the right of. I mean, Howard Dean was to the right in a lot of respects of where I think like the ballast of the Democratic Party is today. He was just the first to sort of like have a more grassroots, low donor campaign, and he was against the Iraq War. I mean, what is it specifically that you want the DNC to do? That you think is going to have this impact?
I think engaging more on the state and local government level, and be more inclusive as far as not only the Democratic Socialists, but also the Green Party, because they tend to lean towards Democratic policy, and be inclusive.
But what does that mean
to those groups?
What would you do? What would you do for what? Like what does that mean? Like you would. Like tactically speaking, I mean, what would you do? Just rhetorically?
No. In the way of tactics, depending on the state, you look at something like in Texas, we have the Railroad Commissioner, for example, and which holds a lot of sway at that state level.
Right.
And being more, and say like, hey, let's make this. Let's have a strategy and solution to really distribute a way for us to flip that particular position.
So you're saying that
as we elect judges,
these are state. I mean,
there's a state of integrated local strategies in every state. As far as the Democratic Party is concerned, it all depends on the state that you're in.
Well, sure.
And I feel the DNC is like you give you're right, the 50 state solution, that imperative. That's real to me. That's more realistic.
Yeah, I would like to see the DNC, but I mean, I don't know, frankly, that Tom Perez is any more or less likely to send resources to the states than Keith Ellison would have been. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
His fundraising has been anemic, and I think part of that is probably a function of like that's not where the energy is in the party. But I just think that like the DNC as an organization, there's like powers attributed to it that I don't think that they necessarily have. Because I think, they've become this sort of like stand-in for frustration that people have with, frankly, other Democrats. And
okay.
And, a frustration that wasn't articulated. I've said many times, if Bernie Sanders starts running in 2014 instead of 2015, and if Bernie Sanders enters that race in 2014 with an actual belief that he was running to win instead of as a message candidate, I think he could have won.
Yeah.
I think it would have been. I would even say not just could have. I would say like.
Last question. Are you watching Clinton on Colbert tonight?
No. I have no plans to. I just honestly I just don't care, and I just but maybe we'll pull clips from it. Depends.
Wait, what is it? The Hillary interview or what?
She's going on Colbert, right? Is Hillary going on Colbert?
Yeah, she's on Colbert tonight.
Yeah. Well,
I'm busy.
I'm gonna binge watch Survivor to get ready for the new.
I gotta listen to Pod Save America.
Appreciate the call. I don't want to. So, you heard this story about Chris Christie's buddy, right? Chris Christie had been brought on to WFAN. And he was supposedly in the running for a job. And then he pulled himself out of it when it was apparent that he was not in the running for a job. Well, his buddy that brought him on, I can't remember the guy's name, was just arrested, I guess, for a huge ticket brokering scam that he was involved in. So sounds like Christie has to go back to thinking he has a political future. And it's time for repair of his relationship with Donald Trump in some way. But first, he's got to get Steve Bannon out of the way, who has been crapping all over Chris Christie. So it's time for Chris Christie. I don't know why this guy is even in the news anymore. But here he is on PBS. Maybe, I know why, because he lives in New Jersey, and the studios are probably in New York. And they got to get somebody. So why not Chris Christie?
Governor, was it what you said, your unwillingness to stand up for the president after that Access Hollywood tape? Do you think that that's what shut you out of the Trump administration?
Well, a few things on this. First is that conversation that Mr. Bannon references in his interview never happened. Never had any conversations with him. I didn't need to convey those kind of feelings to staffers. I was speaking to the principal, to the man who's now president of the United States.
Face. Just face you, Bannon. Go ahead.
Conversation that Mr. Bannon references in his interview never happened. Never had any conversations with him. I didn't need to convey those kind of feelings to staffers. I was speaking to the principal, to the man who's now president of the United States. Secondly, I was there the whole Billy Bush weekend. I was there during debate prep, leading debate prep for the second debate, both on Friday and on Saturday. And by the way, if I was off the team, then why did I lead debate prep for the third debate? Third, I was
Hold on, I can answer that one. I can answer that one because you didn't know you were off the team. They wanted to keep you around for the debate prep, but you were off the team. You just didn't know you were off the team. That happens all the time. You hear those stories about the people like on sitcoms. There was like at least 2 or 3 of these stories where it's like nobody wants to tell the actor that they've been fired. So they call the agent. And then the agent doesn't get in touch. And the next day the actor comes in. Everybody's just looking around going like, oh, shit, what's going on? And then he doesn't find out for like a couple of days. He's not in the script anymore.
positions by this president. It's been widely reported. It is true that I was offered cabinet positions that I turned down. So I suspect this little black book that Mr. Bannon is talking about, the only one who read that black book was Mr. Bannon himself. I know that no one else cared about it. And now that he's been fired, no one's going to really care about anything else Steve Bannon has to say.
Do you stand by your views of the president's comments in that Access Hollywood tape?
Sure. And most importantly, and the reason the president and I have been friends for 15 years, and the reason that we both value each other's friendship, is that we speak the truth to each other. And on that weekend, I spoke the truth directly to the President of the United States, and I didn't need to go on the air or do it publicly or to self-aggrandize myself now, as Mr. Bannon is doing by giving a 60 Minutes interview. This, I suspect, is his last 15 minutes of fame, and that's fine. I hope he enjoys it. My intent is, as it's always been, not as somebody who was just Donald Trump's friend for a year, as Mr. Bannon was, but for somebody like me who's been his friend for 15 years, I want him to be a successful president, first and foremost for this country, secondly, because I like him personally, and third, because I believe that the country will benefit ultimately if Republican policies on tax reform and on infrastructure are put into place to make this country bigger, better, and stronger. And
great again.
Listen, you know
that's
me,
why
Judy.
you know
I have
you
very
didn't say
broad
great
shoulders,
again.
And I've had much tougher characters than Steve Bannon lie about me in the past. I just keep soldiering on and moving forward, and I'll always be here for the president to tell him the truth, which is exactly what I've always done, and why we're still friends, and why I was at the White House Thursday while Steve Bannon was off giving an interview to 60 Minutes.
I don't need to self-aggrandize. That is all that you take out the self-aggrandization from that comment, and there's just a couple of prepositions, I think.
From that story that where Christie was mentioned not coming to Trump's defense, Reince was there's more color and detail detailing his inability to or in unwillingness to defend Trump, like he was quoted. But Reince must have turned down the interview. And Christie, because that would have been a better get than Chris Christie.
Oh, of course. Of course. Never mind didn't turn down the interview. I'm willing to bet you that the moment that stuff came out, Chris Christie's communications director was on the phone with the producers of every television station in New York. There's no doubt in my mind. Always tells the president the truth. So you're telling me that they had sold out of a quarter pounder? I don't know if I buy that. Chrissy, you tell me the truth.
This is all the fries that were in there. What about the ones that were in the bag?
So, wait a second. I'm to believe that you spilt the milkshake on the way here. That's why there's nothing left in here.
Why isn't that in your suit, Chris?
Yeah, that's just sort of strange.
Spill it into your mouth?
Where did it spill? The corners of your mouth? Honestly, look in the mirror first before you come to me with that. Calling from a 951 area code. Who's this?
Hi, this is David from Riverside. How you doing, Sam?
Hi, David. What's on your mind?
I agree with all this. I mean, it's interesting with as I watch the reaction to this book. Someone who worked for their local Democratic Party in the general election and stuck up a lot of door hangers telling people to vote for Hillary. Noticed that all my friends that were Hillary supporters in the primary are just like, all those people who said nice things about Bernie when he endorsed Hillary, like they're just kind of reverting back to their earlier position that he's this terrible person that is ruining the Democratic Party, and it's just very disappointing. And I kind of got into it a little, and I just said, this is ridiculous. We should be moving forward. My frustration. I am kind of alarmed how this is not really a big issue, but the issue of voter suppression, I don't think the Democratic Party is really serious enough about it that they need to be, because I do think the Republicans are serious about it. They've made it obvious that this is their key agenda, is to disenfranchise voters. I mean, we all know Doug, Doug is very serious about disenfranchising voters.
Yeah.
So why don't we respond?
I will say this, and you know what? I'm gonna talk to Ari Berman on Ring of Fire this week, and I'll bring this up with him. But my understanding is that there's been actually a significant amount of money that's been raised, and there's a lot of legal cases that are going on. But at the end of the day, there's really two things that you can do. One, you can fight this stuff in the courts. Or three, I guess. Fight this stuff in the courts. Two, elect people who are going to help reinstate the Voting Rights Act, right? But you're right. This should be on the... And in that regard, that involves not just having the Democrats take over the House, let's say, and maybe just keeping it close in the Senate, but also putting this at the forefront of things that need to be done once they get elected. And hopefully Democrats have smartened up about this, that Republicans, when they come into office, the first thing they do on their agenda is to make sure that they do something that will help them maintain their power. That's what they do, right? We've seen it with Jeff Sessions with this election integrity committee. We saw it in state houses across the country. Democrats need to have this on the top of the agenda. You're absolutely right. And not just from the sake of also for their electoral future, but also just like, come on, right? I mean, this should be pretty basic American value stuff. But the third thing that hopefully is going on, and again, there needs to be funding for this, is that when you have instances where it's harder for people to get ID, where it's polling places are closed, you should be building an infrastructure to help people to do that. But, still, if you got to take somebody 2 hours, 3 hours to get to the nearest DMV, or you got to find people who don't have licenses, and I don't know how you do that, right? I mean, it's not that easy. People spend millions upon millions of billions of dollars in marketing, addictive products to people, and they still can't sell everything they want to sell. Trying to isolate and find people who don't have a driver's license and then get them to go get an ID, even if you're going to basically walk them there, that's a very difficult task to do, which is exactly why, they institute these type of laws to keep people from voting and why they're so successful. So, you got to fight in the courts. I think that's happening, but you got to electorally. I mean, there's implications to this shit. And
one more, just really quick, one more thing. It is related because the other issue is gerrymandering, and there's a bill right now that it looks pretty good. I just maybe this is something you might want to bring up with Ari Berman, but the Fair Representation Act, the HR 3057, which it basically does what's been done in a lot of states, kind of like in California, where you have this, you draw the district, instead of having like tightly controlled districts, you have much larger districts and elect multiple people to represent those districts. So it's harder to gerrymander. And then you also have an independent commission instead of the political partisan commissions to draw up the district.
Right.
So seems to be pretty, and also the ranked choice voting. It sounds really good. Like you would rank in order of preference, and then it would send. I guess each district would send like 3 people from that, and so it's harder to like pigeonhole your own voters like gerrymandering. So I know I kind of like it, but what gives me hesitation is the fact that like Third Way is apparently signed off on this and kind of not.
I think I saw some of that. I mean, I think to a certain extent. That may be their attempt to sort of like get in on, that may be one of those. I don't know. I need to check into the bill, but I did notice that, and I found that interesting too. They tend not to do process stuff like that, but maybe there's some value to them to do it. I don't know. I'll check into it.
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate the call.
Right.
Calling from a 330 area code. Who's this? You are the final caller of the day.
Hey, Sam, it's Ryan from Ohio.
Hello, Ryan. What's on your mind?
Well, first off, I want to call out Richard because I'm, the best R from Ohio from a 330 area.
I think people probably feel pretty comfortable with that. Yeah.
Well, anyhow, you were asking, why is Hillary Clinton doing all this stuff? And honestly, I think it has to do with ego. I think she just
I was
doesn't
not
want Bernie
asking
to
that.
be the
I was not asking
candidate.
that. I was not. Oh, who? Richard was?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make it clear. I'm not asking. I'm asking if anybody can tell me what is constructive about what she's doing. I frankly, I don't care. I mean, I don't know. Why do I show up here every day? I need to make a living. I like to hear myself talk. There's a lot of reasons that aren't terribly pretty, and then there's some reasons that are pretty good. I don't know why she's doing what she's doing. I'm not aware of what could possibly be constructive out of what she's doing. And I haven't read the book. Maybe there's some good historical stuff in there. What's that?
So I think you're hard pressed to find someone who's going to say it's constructive unless they hate Bernie or they're a diehard centrist.
I would tend to agree, but I'm still curious. I'm still going to ask. I don't want to ask too much because I don't want to be part of what I think is destructive about it all. But
that's fair. I think people like to mystify the DNC, and they think it's like this board of directors or something that sits in a room and decides how things are going to be. When the real issues are, we need to stop, giving a platform to these loudmouth centrists who have pull in the party.
And look, the platform, and largely, because of Bernie Sanders, is the most progressive platform that we've had in generations. I don't know, to what extent, a Democratic president's going to follow, but I mean, the next one's going to, you can look at the progression of the Republicans. It's not 1-to-1, but it certainly helps. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Let's take some IMs here. Sexy Liberal 44. I have a solution for universal health care. Legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana nationally. Use the revenue for that to pay it. I don't mind Bernie having political sway in the Democratic Party. I do mind him trashing the Democratic Party. Fair enough. Not the safe to drink. Something to consider and wait for after that Alex Jones clip. Trump flipping out on people who bring him his drink. Fingers crossed. Letter carrier. So if I was a real adult, not a communist, moved to a state for less than 3 years for business, essentially what college kids are doing, should I also be disenfranchised according to Annie Baby? I guess it would matter who you're going to vote for. Trump's got to make a buck. Hey, everyone, extending the conversation from yesterday's too much BS with the class race debate. Might be better to tie them together at the hip. Never mention one without the other. You can both speak to individual cultures' experience while also bringing it back to the other and putting these critiques into a systemic context. Also, I listened to the first 10 minutes of the Pod Save America's interview with Hillary. I know we say things about Trump being an extreme narcissist, but I think it's just rich. People writ large that make them detach from cause and effect of having any kind of responsibility for something negative. Joseph Ballin, according to Alex Jones, drinking Diet Coke causes you to betray all of your campaign promises as president. Wonder if Obama drank Diet Coke. How long till he says Trump was replaced with a body double robot? As for the UN report you cited, please cite UN investigators on the ground in Syria to do a comprehensive investigation into the chemical attacks. Nobody knows what's really going on in Syria outside of the fact that people are on the ground there. I know for a fact Jimmy Dore interviewed Eva Bartlett, who has actually done reporting on the ground in Syria. How many Syrian reporters who have been on the ground have you talked to, Sam? Also, UN Human Rights Council has a Saudi effing Arabia on their council. Jorge the Bad Hombre. Hello, Sausage Fest. Great interview yesterday. Really enjoyed about listening to the content from Mexico. I wondered in the past why MR doesn't cover Mexico a bit more. There are a lot of interviews on political movements from Europe, but Mexico is much closer to the U.S. and also has important economic social ties. Communist Dog, the Trump GOP tax plan calls for the elimination of 3 tax brackets. Top 39% goes to 35%. Nice cut. But what happens to the 15 to 22% bracket? Do they go to 10%? Or does the GOP give the small businesses they claim to be champions of a 10% to 3% tax hike? I haven't looked into the plan. I got to look at it. Shank Steele, first message as a new member. Thanks, Sam. All right. Thank you. Bullprog. I'm supplying Kelly screaming over here during the cruise porn story. Senator Cuck Schumer. I could buy that. Ted Cruz was hacked. No way that weird mofo beats it to standard MF PIV porn. Ted Cruz staff. I never liked that video. I was trying to give it a dislike. Accidentally clicked like. 2 girls, 1 cup is not good. Sick. Cuck Todd. Kelly has gone one day in the show as a porn segment. I like where this is going. Staffing issue. Local person. Did you catch Hillary on NPR complaining again that Sanders isn't a Democrat and about all his personal attacks? Unbearable and hypocritical. It's crazy. Hugo Ball. Sam, Matt, I'm starting a snake venom inoculation club. It's part of the rural agenda. Could you guys fill in some of the details that Alex Jones was referring to when he applied this as comment sort of thing it was? Biz 916. Oh, you are a... Missouri Blues. Daily Kos story on the arrested ER nurse added a new turn toward understanding bad cop culture. Send it an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Bone Dog. It's bitter enders, not dead enders, as in fight to the bitter end. Okay. Penny for your thoughts. Couldn't agree with Richard Moore. The Hillary book is so obviously about her narcissistic ego in defense of the neoliberal Democratic establishment. And I voted for her, albeit with great difficulty. Adventures of Cuck Finn. As anti-capitalist leftists, we can't move on as long as liberal progressives like you are going to keep up the narrative that leftists who despise Hillary Clinton are irrational children. It's strange to me how all of you seem not to understand why leftist people of color would be very angry at the Clintons and Obama to the point of outright hatred. Look, I have been extremely critical of the Clintons for decades. Decades. I was on television in the summer of 2009 critiquing Obama. But if you are defining leftists, anti-capitalist leftists, who hate Hillary Clinton to the extent that they would project upon them that they have Parkinson's, then I'm sorry. You're an irrational child. Although, to be fair, I'm not sure how in-depth awareness that children have of Parkinson's. Obama detained and deported children, and Hillary Clinton gave her full support. I'm fully aware of that. Spoke about it in real time. Do you assume the Latinx community is not deeply familiar with Obama and Clinton's role in the chaos in South and Central America? I presume they're aware of it, as well as with the Republican Party. Do you not all understand how incredibly insulting it is to call these people rational for hating Hillary Clinton for that?
Hating or not voting for her in a swing state? Like, define it as hating. Like, if you want to hate whoever, I don't really care.
Yeah. To not vote for Clinton, particularly in a swing state, is not understanding what voting does. That's all. They have good reason to hate her, and in many cases, it's very personal. Fine. I mean, I don't know. To a certain extent, I can't tell if you're making like a straw man argument here. Maybe Michael can come visit some leftist brown people in East L.A., and he can explain to their faces why their deep anger for Hillary Clinton is illogical and, unquote, weird, as Matthew said last week. Look, hating Hillary Clinton is not the issue, because hating Hillary Clinton does absolutely zero for any of the people you're talking about. I don't care if you hate Hillary Clinton, but when you have an election between two people, one of whom you know is going to win, and you make the assessment that Donald Trump is going to be better for the people you're talking about, you're just wrong. All I hear is you calling me and my working class comrades stupid children. Well, then you've got something wrong with your ears. That's the irrational part. Cola Dict. You asked what's the value of Clinton's book in Veridar, and Peter Dow said on Twitter that the people who the site is meant for are very happy with it. He forgot to say that all two of them, Peter and Hillary, it's to make them feel better. Theodore Cuxtable, what is the impact of the memorandum to shift powers over economic sanctions and visas to the Secretary of Treasury and the Secretary of State? Did you already discuss this? I didn't. But what I would imagine it does is it changes what the criterias are. But I'm not aware of which way that went, from where. But it changes the criteria in which these decisions are made. And I would imagine not in the best of ways. If it went to the Treasury from the Secretary of State, what it suggests to me is that it becomes about economic interests versus a whole range of issue sets. All right, a couple more IMs and that's it. Show. The local chapters have a much bigger say on the national messaging than most think. If you don't like it, go to a monthly meeting and start changing it. Indeed. CC. CBS Morning a couple weeks ago featured Black Panther segment in which the leader and founder, Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, I think, commented that carrying guns were no longer necessary for protection. All people who happen to be black need to carry as a camera phone and a video to live stream, which that man had turned on, and it did save his life. Very possibly. Ryan Tennant. His book is aimed squarely at the Hillbots, the people who are only unconditionally supportive of Clinton, but who take any kind of criticism of Clinton as some kind of personal affront and want to deflect blame from candidate Clinton for a loss to the clown fascist. I feel like these people are who want the one magic bullet to cling to blame for Clinton's loss rather than the reality of the many various factors that had to combine in just the right fashion for her to lose. I largely suspect these people had so much emotionally invested in Clinton winning are not really over a loss. Yes, but I will say this. I totally agree with everything you're saying. I could drop out the words Bernie and, you know, that single bullet is the DNC, and that's it. Primary season is always sort of the so-called silly season, but it's had some lasting effect. I don't understand why why everyone's placing so much importance on Hillary's book. I see it as a catharsis because she lost to effing Donald Trump. She's trying to understand, and I'm sure many staunch supporters want to hear her views. In the long run, won't make a difference, and hopefully this puts the 2016 elections to bed. I'm over it. Time to move on. I'm with you. Kevin 11721, have a Billy Bush weekend. Death Tongue. Breaking news. City of Kenosha, Wisconsin says it won't seek Foxconn plant in a blow to Scott Walker's plan to give billions of dollars to foreign company. Wow. That's a big loss for him. He staked a lot on that. In the stick, seriously, is this what we're going to get now that Kelly's gone? Just a sausage fest of chicks should just shut the F up? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I didn't say that. Justin Side, what is this? Too much bullshit? I thought it was the masturbating bear show. Reefer Cake. Left yet, you act as if you're going to make peace with who invented the dumb black. Why is this the name of my website when I voted for Hillary Clinton? That is the answer of your question. I'm not sure I understand what that means, Jimmy Reefer Cake. Lowe's 505. Don't you love people who don't have their own shows critique you when you don't address an issue, then you must be for or against it? He didn't talk about fracking, then he must be for it, stupid. And the final IM of the day. For the long time, I'm a long-time member, umpteenth IMer, who is grappling with your comments on basically telling Hillary Clinton to shut up and smile. I'm not telling Hillary Clinton to do shit. How many times can I say? Of course she can write a book. But I'm saying I'm not obligated to read it. If she wants to go on and trash a significant segment of the Democratic Party and claim that the election was rigged and that Bernie Sanders damaged her permanently, she can absolutely do it. And if you can tell me how this is constructive, that's all I said today. I'm not even going to read the rest of this IM. Do I understand your argument that you don't want to relitigate the election? Do you not want to relitigate 9/11 weapons of mass destruction, Bush Cheney, credit default swaps. Are you telling me that you are making an equivalence between the 2000 election and Bernie Sanders critiquing Hillary Clinton during the primary? Is that what I'm supposed to rationally accept as a human being? This is absurd. This is absurd. You want to argue that Bernie Sanders as a candidate was not sensitive to a host of issues and that's why he shouldn't be president? Fine. But to argue that Bernie Sanders, 12% of Bernie Sanders supporters defected and did not vote for Hillary Clinton or voted for Donald Trump. 25% of Hillary Clinton voters in 2008 voted for John McCain. What's the complaint here? What's the complaint? I mean, I just don't get it. And you who revel in what Clinton is doing now, 2018 is on you folks. Understand that. You want to alienate the guy who has Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Kristen Gillibrand, Jeff Merkley, signing on to his plan, co-sponsoring his seminal piece of legislation, and you want to say that's not who the Democratic Party is, there's a real problem. There's a real problem with math. You want to continue to litigate it? Litigate it all you want. But someone needs to call me and tell me why that's constructive. Calling from a 219 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Alana. I'm from Indianapolis.
Hi, Alana. Can you tell me what is constructive? What is constructive about saying that Bernie Sanders somehow damaged Hillary Clinton in the primary, so much so that she couldn't win the general election?
I think that it's completely the wrong direction to be thinking. And I think Bernie Sanders himself has even said this. I think he was on Colbert last week talking about how this is going back to 2016. This is not going forward, and talking about 2018. But I think one thing that we can make constructive about this whole discussion, which is, again, irrelevant, and everything Hillary Clinton has to say, I've said recently, is completely irrelevant, is that I think it reaffirms that going forward with the Democratic Party, and now that we see we have these more establishment-type Democrats coming on to co-sponsor Bernie's legislation for health care, I think it shows us a little bit of hope that there are still people that are engaged, even though we're not in a presidential election cycle. I think that it shows there are people still willing to defend the big issues, and I've not heard a lot of people say that, you know, what Hillary is doing is constructive. I think I've just heard mostly criticism of her and disdain for her in general. So I think that it shows that a good majority of the population, especially on the Democratic side, is moving toward a more progressive agenda.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think that's all you can take from it. I mean, if you want to try and shine some positive light on it, is that, and you had a caller earlier who mentioned, sorry, I have a baby crying in the back seat, so
I understand.
But,
I'm sorry.
But, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just that, you know, you have to take from this what you can, and the conversation. Thankfully, also out of this, we now know that Hillary Clinton is never running again for office, and that I think is something that everyone can celebrate, because she's just too conflicted of a candidate to ever, you know, want to ever hear from again.
All right. Well, I mean, okay, I appreciate the call. I mean, look, I have, you know, refrained from Clinton bashing because I don't think she's going to run again. I'm not concerned about it. She has every right to write a book about it. My point is, and obviously not everybody is happy at the idea that she won't run again. My point is, what's constructive about it? Bernie Sanders, when he criticizes the Democratic Party, you can disagree or agree with the criticism. He is attempting to reform the party. How do we know? Because he knows that he clearly could not run for anything nationally without doing it on the Democratic Party ticket. He knew it then. He knows it now. Is he hammering Brian Schatz for coming up with this interim proposal to single payer? No, he is not. He is signed on as a co-sponsor for a bill that some would like to make it seem like it was in competition to his. This is not the actions of someone who's trying to burn anything down. This is the actions of someone who's trying to build something. You may not agree with what he's trying to build, but he's clearly trying to build it. We're going to end the show, and tomorrow, for the fun half, if you disagree with what I'm saying, I want you to call this program and tell me, and this is a very sincere request. Don't tell me that I'm bashing anybody or I'm doing this. All I'm asking is, what is constructive? This should be a very easy answer to answer if it's the case that there's something constructive of this. I don't know how I get so annoyed, but this is really, it's really, people are just not hearing what I'm saying. You can react to some callers, fine, but I'm just curious, what is constructive about it? I'm not talking about neutral. I'm just talking about constructive. Of course, everybody has a right to write a book. I don't begrudge a former candidate going out, making money on the lecture circuit. I got news for you. If I could make anywhere from $300,000 to $300,000 for a half an hour speech or an hour speech, I would do it. All right. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I get some